Why can't the Titanic be recovered from the bottom of the ocean? This is a suggestion via Discord. This is coming from the channel Mind Twister.
Hi there. The transatlantic Titanic was the largest ship of its time, but its life was very short. The first and only voyage of the ship began April 10, 1912, and ended 4 days later. This tragedy occurred on the night of April 14th through the 15th, 1912. When the Titanic crashed, at least 1,496 people died, making this disaster one of the largest shipwrecks in history. Among the passengers of the ship were some of the richest people in the world, as well as immigrants from Ireland, Great Britain, and Scandinavia, who were heading to the United States in search of a better life.
Okay, guys, I just wanted to see where we're going with the video itself here, guys. I definitely want to point out that I think that you should probably leave it where it is. It's a grave, guys.
The Titanic was built on the latest technology, providing a high level of safety for the vessel. But due to insufficient requirements, the ship had lifeboats for only 1,178 people, which was 2 times less than the number of people
needed,
on
right?
board.
Yeah.
Here is an interesting fact about the construction of the ship. 5 people were required to drive only 1 rivet. It was hellish work. One person heated the rivet in the furnace until it was hot. Then the heated rivet was placed in the hole, where 2 people held the rivet on one side, while on the other side, 2 people started beating it with heavy hammers. From the blows, the rivet expanded and held the sheets together. It took these guys 4 minutes to complete the work with 1 rivet.
And then you got on that boat?
But in 1912, the workers had to meet this demand within 20 seconds. The deadlines were tight, and only strong guys were able to do such work. After all, there were 3 million rivets on the Titanic.
That doesn't seem very sturdy.
The ship began its journey from Southampton, England, then proceeded to France and Ireland, and from there went to America. But the journey was soon interrupted when the Titanic crashed into an iceberg. The collision caused damage to the ship, and the ship began to sink. After 2.5 hours, it was completely underwater. The collapse of the Titanic agitated the whole world, not only because of the large number of victims, but also because of the mistakes made during the catastrophe.
At the time,
public research was conducted in the United States and England, and a list of changes in ship safety standards was provided.
probably we got rid of the concept of like utilizing rivets in the manner that they were being utilized in, guys. Probably. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a shipbuilder. I don't know nothing about shipbuilding. You guys sent me a random video today, you guys, right? But it probably had something to do with that, right? Maybe we're not utilizing that anymore.
The wreckage of the Titanic was lost for a long time at the bottom of the ocean, but they were discovered on September 1st, 1985, at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean at a depth of 12,415 feet. Thanks to this, it was possible to extract many valuable things from the seabed. These exhibits are stored in various world museums. The Titanic is possibly the most famous ship in history. The memory still lives on, thanks to numerous films, books, songs, and exhibitions dedicated to this liner. But although everyone knows the history of Titanic, there are secrets that almost no one has heard. The first departure of this ship for navigation was under threat. In England, the miners began a strike, demanding higher wages. How was this related to the Titanic? It simply did not have enough coal for the furnaces, because coal had stopped being mined. The tickets cost a lot of money, and almost all had already been sold out. People handed over tickets purchased on other ships to buy the coveted piece of paper, which cost many lives. And for the cheapest ticket, you had to give only £2 of sterling. This is about $86 in modern money. It is worth noting that most of the tickets that were sold were for £2 of sterling.
So obviously it was incredibly expensive, and not everyone obviously could afford it at the time.
For the third class. These tickets made up the main profit for the
Incredibly
Titanic
expensive.
because almost every worker could afford such a ticket.
Really?
The most expensive ticket for the Titanic was worth about $30,000 of today's money.
Like, I honestly figured that that was not a thing that was affordable back then. I mean, looking at how much, $86, is that equivalent? Maybe it could be that,
The
but
management
still, that's ridiculously expensive for the time.
understood that in no case should the voyage be canceled so that people would not demand their money back, because part of the money from the sold tickets was used to buy all the coal that remained in the mines throughout the country and on all of the ships that canceled their trips due to the shortage of passengers from the competition of the Titanic. As a result, the liner safely began to take on passengers. The last surviving passenger of the Titanic died in 2009 at 97 years old. Her
She was a
name
baby.
was Milvina Dean, and she was 2.5 months old when the ship sank. She was the youngest passenger of the Titanic. The girl traveled with her parents and brother. Her family sold all her property in England and wanted to open a tobacco shop in the United States. But her father died in the shipwreck, and the surviving family members were forced to return to England. Disgraced Japanese. Masabumi Hosono was the only Japanese aboard the Titanic. He worked as a government official in the Japanese Ministry of Transport. When the ship began to sink, the man managed to get onto one of the few rescue boats that were intended primarily for children and women. When this story became known, he was awaited by shame in his native country. He lost his job and was condemned by all his countrymen. This shame was so serious that when the Titanic film was released, the Masabumi family published a letter in the press apologizing for the act of their relative, although the man
Wow.
himself was no longer alive.
Right. I mean, that's some honor for you right there, though, guys. I can definitely also imagine that that was definitely, front page news out there.
But there were also heroes on the Titanic. On board the Titanic was only one Mexican, Deputy Manuel Uruchurtu, who traveled to Paris. At the time of the shipwreck, the Mexican politician gave up his place to a woman who told him that in New York, she was waiting for her husband and son. The only thing that Manuel asked in return was that the woman visit his wife and tell her about his last minutes.
Did she?
He died that terrible night, and the surviving passenger visited his widow in 1924, 12 years after the tragedy. She would later admit that in fact that at the time of the shipwreck, she did not have children or a husband. The downfall of the Titanic
Yeah, guys, the Titanic was definitely an absolute horror show for men, guys. Different time, though.
was predicted. 14 years before the Titanic tragedy, Morgan Robertson wrote a novel entitled Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. This book tells about the largest ship of that time, which collided with an iceberg in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean on a cold April night. This ship in this story was called Titan and was very similar to Titanic,
The Wreck of the
even
Titan
in the picture.
by Morgan
Therefore,
Robinson.
many ask the question, was it a coincidence or a prediction of the future?
I mean, a mighty coincidence. Absolutely. Absolutely.
In our lifetime, a group of researchers for over 30 years has carefully studied the materials about the loss of the Titanic, and at the end of 2016, they made a sensational statement. It turned out that the cause of the disaster was not only an iceberg. In fact, the catastrophe was indeed predetermined in many respects in advance. The fact is that before the ship entered the voyage, an event occurred that later played an important role during the crash. A few days before the Titanic's fateful departure, a fire broke out in one of its fuel depots. The captain of the ship was well aware of this problem, but
And then
he
you still
decided to
went
handle it
anyway?
on his own. After all, the prestige of the most luxurious, huge, and beautiful ship of its time was at stake. The crew fought the fire on their own for several days, and when the
Several days.
Titanic arrived at the port, it was moved to the shore on the other side, so that passengers could not see the soot and charred paint.
Oh,
Traces
no.
of soot were clearly visible in many photographs, but until that moment, no one had paid attention to the fire that had happened. The ship was on the move and seemed completely serviceable and invincible. Because of the flames, the temperature inside the compartment reached 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. The metal of the ship lost its elasticity and became brittle. Under normal conditions, a collision with an iceberg would not have caused such fatal damage.
It was
But
weakened.
unfortunately, the blow happened at just the most weakened place. The Titanic cannot get out of the
Oh
ocean.
my God.
Have you ever wondered why the Titanic has still not gotten out of the water? It could be turned into a museum or an attraction and get a lot of money.
Okay, guys, if this is like a real like depiction of it, no, that's not going anywhere. I mean, not even just the fact that I'm telling you, like, I feel personally it's like a grave site. I don't know why you'd want to specifically pull that up, right? Personally. But looking at it, if that's like a real visual representation of what it actually looks like down there, it's going to fall apart. Like, as soon as you put anything on it that's going to lift it, it's going to fall apart. Guys. Yeah.
But the wreckage of the ship cannot be lifted from the bottom, as they are badly damaged and will break apart during any movement. In addition, the process of destruction continues. Surprisingly, when the ship was discovered in 1985, it was in fairly good condition due to the high pressure at the depth and a lack of light. Where the Titanic was located, there was a lot of living creatures that slowed down the corrosion process. However, everything changed a few years ago when a bacteria appeared to begin to destroy the metal. It is surprising that no one has ever discovered this bacterium. Yes, a previously unknown bacteria is eating away at Titanic and turning it into waste, which the ocean will soon swallow.
Absolutely.
This is why the
Earth
Titanic
takes
cannot
everything
be
back.
recovered. Now that you know these stories, write in the comments.
Oh, that's it, guys. Yeah, guys, the Earth is just going to take that back. That's a guaranteed thing here. Give it another 100 years, and you probably don't even know where it was, bro. To be honest here, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. And I'm also, again, I want to kind of reiterate this for those who just move all the way to the end here. Um, I think it's a grave. I don't think that it's worth pulling up. I mean, could it be a museum of sorts? How? How could it be a museum? Bro, go down there and get a couple of pieces of the ship and say, hey, this is from the Titanic. Like, that's the extent of it. Go get some like really good images before it's gone, let's say. And then move on. We have to be able to move on from things. Luckily, we've learned from scenarios like this here, guys. There are absolutely gigantic cruise ships that are probably 20 times the size of the Titanic. Like, look at the size of the Titanic versus like some of the modern like ocean liners, and you'll realize instantly, bro. Okay. So whatever was fixed, I'm glad they fixed it. Hopefully they fixed the rivet thing. I don't understand the methodology behind putting something like that into water. Like, you're putting a lot of faith into that. I don't see any, I don't know. I mean, there could be something that they put inside that they didn't show us. But if it's just like metal, a hole, and then metal put into it, how is that watertight? I mean, how is that watertight? Like, are you constantly having to run like bilge pumps and things like that? Guys, why? I would never get on that thing. Never. But all right, listen, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. You guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly.